What's up guys, Jay here, and a couple of years ago I talked about a webcam that sort of changed everything for me, and I've been using it ever since on my live streams on Twitch. If you guys have watched any of those live streams, you've seen the quality of this camera. And of course I'm talking about the Insta360 Link webcam. However, they have just come out with two new webcams. We've got the Insta360 Link 2C and the Link 2. So we're gonna do a full review on it today, kind of showing you some of the feature sets and stuff, and just like last time, we are shooting the entire video on the Link 2C. All right, so let's talk real quick about the Insta360 Link and what makes the new one so much more improved. So if you don't recall that video, this actually is an AI-powered gimbal webcam. So what's cool about that is the fact that the camera itself can be moved around and adjust an AI track. It can face follow. As you're moving around in the frame, the camera can actually follow you, which makes it perfect for standing presentations, kind of like live instruction, or if you're doing live streams that have you up and moving around, say you're doing cooking or shop work or something like that, it's pretty awesome. Now the Link 2 and 2C are using the exact same half-inch 4K sensor, which does 4K 30. Obviously it can do 1080p 30 and 720p 30, so you have three resolutions to choose from there. But the major difference between the two of them is the Link 2C is actually a non-gimbal. So that's perfect for anyone that's using a more stationary sitting position, like let's say you're just doing live streaming on Twitch for games and stuff. You don't necessarily need the gimbal. So that keeps the cost down, but you get the same high sensor quality that you get with the Link 2. So the Link 2 is basically the next evolution of the Link as we know it. And one of the things that is a heavy focus for this time around is the webcam's audio quality. And we'll be doing a whole section about audio quality, but no one ever really considers webcams to have usable audio. And that's been true for many, many years. But Insta360 is really looking at changing the game when it comes to audio quality. So let's go ahead and kind of take you guys for a demo to kind of show you what's new and different with the software. It's more than just a webcam. It really is a studio at this point, giving you a ton of flexibility when it comes to what you can do with it. And you can do it all from one piece of software. So let's go ahead and get in here to the desktop and sort of show you what you get in terms of control features. So this is the Insta360 Link software. It's pretty awesome. I have it in dark mode right now, which is kind of nice, a little easier on the eyes. But you can see I'm obviously doing live playback right now. I am recording this video, obviously, in 4K 30. So it is a 30 FPS camera, it does 4K, 1080p, and 720, as I said. What's really awesome though is with the gimbal camera, and you can do this with the Link 2C, by the way. It does it in a pixel way, and we'll talk about that in a second. It does tracking. Now tracking is awesome. It does it via AI. It just recognizes your face. It can even do group tracking if there's more than one person in the shot. So if I enable the tracking button right here, you can see now it's like kind of locked on and it's sort of following me around. We can even change the track speed. So ordinary is just kind of like, think of like somebody, like a cameraman, like I've got Phil over here doing it right there. So it's kind of mimicking kind of how a human would do it. It sort of takes a second, not a second, but a little bit of a delay to respond to it. So it kind of follows the motion. If we go to quick, it's gonna be much faster and it's tracking speed. If you kind of move around, you're like, can I outrun it? Nope, can't outrun it. It's very quick. So, and then we can even go to slow, which at that point, as you can see, it's a much more kind of a lazy sort of follow, which is probably fine. If you're doing, I think slow would be the right setting if you were sitting at a desk or something, kind of moving around like this. You know, I'm kind of leaning for something. That way it's not like a jarring quick effect. But as you can see right now, the gimbal camera is obviously following me around. It can obviously do height too, because it's fully tiltable. It's like, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. So it's kind of an awkward angle because it's pointing up at me, but as you can see, it can follow me around the room too as I'm walking. It'll even do zoom if I have it doing zoom. Right now, zoom's actually turned off. That's gesture controlled. We can talk about that in a second. But as you can see, slow would be better for more of a sitting position. So if I went to ordinary, it'd be able to handle me standing up and moving around a little bit easier. And then you see as I sit down, it follows a little better. So you've got some pretty adjustable settings there. So yeah, that's the auto tracking, and that's what makes it really awesome. Now, one thing that's awesome when we talked about this with the Insta360 One, I'm gonna refer to it as the One just to be less confusing. We're obviously talking about the Link 2, we have the Link 1. We can do presets. So for instance, I can have my talking head position right here, be the first preset. And one of the major things that's different about this new software is I love that it shows me a thumbnail of what the preset is. The previous version of the software with the Link 1 had a name. We could name it, we could still do that if we wanted. But I love that it's a thumbnail, so there's no question about what it is. So now if I want, I can kind of grab the little joystick here and I can move the camera around if I want to. I actually prefer to just drag it right here from the window. I can click right here inside the window and move it around. So now I can add another position of pointing at Phil if I wanted. And if I hit the plus here we go, now we got Phil. And I can even turn this around to face the other direction if I wanted to say, have a preset of Nick. Be like, you know what, let's focus on Nick, and there we go. So now I can just switch between these presets. And so that's awesome if you're doing a live stream where you're gonna have multiple things maybe you wanna show, or maybe multiple people on the stream, so you can sort of focus it on who you want. Now the cool thing is it will AI track even from that position. So you can see now it has identified Nick. So as Nick is moving, even though the preset is set for his position, as Nick moves around, it'll follow him. So it's awesome to have a preset position with AI tracking within. Now the cool thing is if I come back to me, it's still set to tracking, and we have HDR enabled right now, so that's why I was kind of blown out for a second, because it is doing an HDR exposure balance based on the weight of the entire scene. So if I go back to Nick, you'll notice there's a light right behind him as well, but we can still see Nick just fine because it's exposing for him. But we can also see some of the details happening up there in the light over his right shoulder because of the fact that we do have HDR enabled. I think that that's an awesome feature. I've used it on my live streams quite a bit because sometimes I'm doing a guitar stream where I'm sitting on a stool, which is a higher position. So I just have that saved in Insta360 software as guitar. So it has a zoom and a height position that's set for that. That's really, really cool. That's honestly one of my favorite functions about the Link cameras is the gimbal. So although the 2C is perfect for a sitting position, I like to move around a bit in my stream. So the tracking of the gimbal is awesome. So I mentioned that I have HDR enabled. I don't see any reason not to have it enabled. There's no hit to the quality of the image, but it allows us to do things like, say, you know, if you had a bright window behind you, or we can have this studio light right now above Phil kind of act as like the sun, because it's set to pretty bright right now. But as you can see, we can see the details even in Phil's beard because of the fact that we have HDR enabled. So we have the light, we can see the stuff happening behind the light right here. That's definitely darker than the light is putting out. And we still have the details on the front side of Phil's face. So if we were to kind of look at this as if we were sitting in front of a bright window in an office or something, we're not going to be silhouetted because it starts to expose for outside. It does a balance and understands like, hey, there's people and there's a bright scene. Let's do some exposure balance here in HDR to make sure that the things that are important can be seen, but then you get that dynamic range of HDR. So having HDR in a webcam and the fact that it's a 1/2-inch sensor is a nice thing to have, especially for live streaming. If you have studio lights, most people that are streaming Twitch and stuff have kind of like bright lights around them. That's just sort of like the ambiance people go for. It's awesome to see that. So anyway, we can move back to my position here. We talk about AI zoom, so we can sort of give it a priority here. So right now it's set to half body. So you'll notice as I set it to head, it's sort of like slowly punching in. But if I scoop back, it's gonna start zooming in because it wants to try and emphasize and hang on to that sort of like upper torso head type of framing. So if I zoom in or scooch closer, it's an Alfred Hitchcock effect. Look at that. 4090 costs how much? Wait, I was too close. That's like the worst Alfred Hitchcock, but you get the idea. Half body does the same thing, only this is perfect if you're doing standing types of presentation for like the whiteboard and stuff. So you notice it didn't really change when I went from head to half body. It punches in a little bit on head. And then obviously whole body is where it's gonna try and zoom out as far as possible. In fact, let's go ahead and have Nick come back here to demonstrate this. So now you can notice as it's tracking Nick now, it's more zoomed out and we can see more of his body because of the fact that it's now trying to do a more whole body type of tracking. Now it's kind of an awkward angle because we're on a desk and he's standing, but this is perfect if we look at sort of the thumbnail that they have there. If you have a camera that's sort of set up on like a conference table and you're in front of a whiteboard and whatnot. The other thing too is you do get gesture control, which is kind of nice. So let's say you're sitting there by yourself and you're trying to zoom the camera in or zoom the camera out, you can do gesture. So you have to turn on gesture control, it's in the more settings. If you click that now, you can see you have 3 types of gestures. So if you put up like the peace symbol, that basically says to kind of focus on the whiteboard. We don't have a whiteboard set up, so I can't really demonstrate that. So if you want to turn on and off AI tracking, and if you're not in front of the keyboard like this, say you're standing or something, you can hang up or hold up your palm and you can see it turned off AI tracking right now. Or I can put up my palm and it will turn it back on. So that's pretty cool. Let's say I'm all the way back here and I'm like, oh, I want you to zoom in more. If you make an L, that tells it for zoom, and up automatically zooms in, and down automatically zooms out. So you can sort of frame it from a distance, which is pretty cool, just through gestures. That's now a very extreme close-up. Look at the detail. I didn't know I have a hair sticking straight out the side of my head right now. Well, webcam would pick up one hair like that. Let's talk about some of the effects. So with the whole amount of people working from home, doing school classes from home, live streaming, and maybe their background is not that great to look at because they don't have a dedicated space or whatever, we can actually do background replacement. And this is something that became very popular with Zoom and other third parties. The problem with using third-party background replacement is you're gonna have a different replacement for every software that you use. So if you have Zoom, you have Teams or Google Meets or whatever, they all have their own backgrounds. So now you can do it directly on the camera. So you can see right now we have background selected as none. We have blur, bokeh. By the way, I need to point out bokeh doesn't work in 4K. That's really because of the intensity that it takes to process that. So 1080p and below is where bokeh works. Or we just have straight up background replacements. So here's blur. I have the intensity pretty much down to nothing, but we can sort of adjust the intensity that we want. Now, the higher the intensity you go, the more the edges are gonna kind of look a little bit artifacty as it's replacing the background. But remember, it's doing this right now through AI and pixel distortion. So it's not actually blurring or doing any sort of focus adjustment on a lens. It's actually doing it all through AI. So I think a more natural type of blur is usually somewhere around 10%. You hear the fans on the laptop ramping up a little bit because it does need like an NVIDIA GPU or a discrete GPU for this to happen, because it is happening on hardware. So it's happening in real time, which is actually, the hardware is gonna matter at this point. But let's go ahead and do background replacement. The lighting looks a little weird because I have blue lights around me, but you could always adjust your lighting to look a little more natural. But now let's say I'm sitting in an airport or something and having a meeting before going on a flight. I could make the background look like something other than just random people walking around, or that guy that's in the background like, coffee shop. That's probably more natural, the kind of place you would find me. And then we have two motion graphics that I want to point out here. We do have this one here. It's just a little bit of like a kind of a motion, slow motion moving thing, I guess. And then we have a much more even subtle one here, which is very, you can see there, it's kind of like blue and white, kind of hard to see. But anyway, so the point is now you can do background replacements directly on the camera, which is nice to see. Now we do have different filters and stuff we could add if you just wanted to sort of change the intensity of the color and stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the focus real quick, because one of the cool features of this webcam is just how quickly and easily it's able to focus on things. So let's say I'm sitting here live streaming and I want to show you something on this box up close. I move it up close, look at how sharp that text is. We're only about 6 inches away from the webcam, and it's having no problem whatsoever. Even like, look, the small details on the box right here. Okay, this is pretty nuts. And then look how fast it comes back to find my face and focus on it. And do some exposure adjustment in HDR on the screen. Again, bring it up here. Because we're in HDR, you can see it finds the text, exposes, you can read it just fine. And then once again, here we are. So that is, I love that. Also too, when it comes to group tracking, I forgot to show this earlier. If I hit auto tracking, you can see it shows a square if we have multiple people here. So I could say, you know what, track Phil. So there it is, it's tracking Phil. If I want, I can actually reselect it and select me now, and now it will focus on me. But let's say I wanted to keep both of us in frame. You can see Phil's kind of on the edge of the frame there. If I hit the little arrow up, I can do group tracking. So now it will automatically see both of us. And if Phil starts to separate out, you can see it's keeping us centered. So as Phil is moving, it's moving the frame so that it can do the best job it can to keep both of us in frame. So if we kind of both move into the center now, see how it adjusts itself? And it goes, hey, there's 2 people in frame. I want to keep them centered. So that's pretty neat if you're doing any sort of a live stream or a podcast or something where you want to be able to keep everyone in shot. So that's pretty cool. As long as you don't go outside of the viewing angle of the camera, it's gonna focus and keep you centered in the frame as much as possible. But I started to talk about webcam audio. No one buys webcams for the microphone. The only time I think I've ever used a webcam microphone is in a pinch. because I forgot to bring a headset or I forgot to bring a standalone mic. Webcam audio is not good. Laptop audio is not good. So Insta360 is trying very hard right now to change the game when it comes to audio. So you can see on this ring right here, it's also a directional microphone. So it is going to be prioritizing the voice, and this is where the AI comes in. It analyzes through AI the voice of the presenter to make it the priority, and it uses the ambient microphone on the top of the webcam to subtract the ambient sound. And it has different settings for that. So if we come down here to our voice settings, which is under more, you can see we have three different audio modes. We have voice focus, which is basically saying, it's a quiet environment, it's just me talking, focus on my voice. It means it's not having to do a lot of processing to keep a lot of background noise out of the audio. So for instance, if I was to right now just clap my hands, you probably won't hear it, because it's actually doing a really good job of taking care of that peaky sound and getting rid of it. Voice suppression is going to be if you're in a loud environment where there's a lot of other people talking and such. Let's say, like I said, that airport environment, or you're having a meeting. Do you know how many times I've tried to actually live stream at CES? Because I would have a backpack and a laptop and I had a camera and a mic. Do you know how difficult that was? I stopped doing that years ago because it was nearly impossible for people to hear me over all of the amount of noise in the area. So voice suppression will do a very good job at suppressing other voices, but prioritizing on mine. And then we have music balance. That is if you're in an environment maybe that's got like background music or something going, or there's other noise. You want some of that ambient sound to come through, and it won't process the speaker's voice as much. And it actually has a more natural kind of a sound to it, but it's able to attenuate the background noise and still make the presenter's voice presentable. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that right now. So right now it's just me sitting here talking. You know, I've got, I don't know, I'm banging on the table and stuff. You may or may not be able to hear some of that. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and have Nick turn on a soundtrack of just crowd noise. Go ahead and turn it on. So you probably heard it for a second and then heard it kind of get attenuated away. So I'm still sitting here talking right now. This is just random crowd noise, like you might hear at a mall. Maybe you might hear it in any sort of area where there's lots of people talking. It's like kind of a wall of sound. You can't make out what people are saying, you can hear it. But as I continue talking, you can hear me just fine. But let's say I want more of that sound to be suppressed. So Nick, go ahead and start up the crowd sounds. So now that I'm voice suppression, it should be a little more aggressive with the background noise. It's aware that, hey, we're in a louder environment. So it's going to do a more intense job of listening for my voice and more heavily sort of drown out the background noise. But if I go to music balance, we'll hear that noise come back a little bit, but it's still not going to overpower me. So now we have a mixture of music playing and the bar noise and me talking. So music balance is basically going to balance the background noise to 50% and my voice to 50%. So this is the way that feature sounds. This is probably a rare use case, but it's nice to at least have an option to play around with to ask, you know, in the meeting or in your live stream, which sounds better. Okay, so let's say you have loud neighbors. Maybe you have loud kids like I do that are just, they're constantly intrusive. Maybe you have somebody that's just a very dedicated cleaner and they start vacuuming. So Nick is actually vacuuming right now on the other side of the room. In fact, I'll turn the camera around so you can see it. There is Nick running a vacuum cleaner. And this is the way the voice suppression sounds, and he's approximately 10 feet away. So it's obviously going to have some processed sound to it, but the point is you can still hear me. You can still hear what I'm saying. Now, a vacuum cleaner is a very extreme use case. And the fact that you can hear me with someone vacuuming in the same room is pretty impressive. So if I have Nick go ahead and stop vacuuming, what you're going to hear now is you're going to hear the voice processing go back into a more natural state as I'm talking, and you were able to hear everything I said along the way. So yeah, maybe don't have people vacuuming in the same room as you, but just in case a loud noise happens or a Harley Davidson drives by or something, it's going to be able to pick you up. Now, one of the other things when it comes to controlling the webcam that could be kind of annoying is if you're live streaming, you're in OBS or something like that, and you need to make some adjustments. In fact, I've dealt with this myself. This is a feature that's existed, and I don't know why I haven't been using it, because it's actually a lifesaver, and that is web control. You don't even need additional software to do it. So if we click this little web button up here, it says connect to your mobile phone remotely to control the device. As long as your phone or your tablet or whatever you want to control it with, and your camera, computer it's connected to, is on the same wireless network, then all you have to do is scan the QR code. It will bring up a web interface, and every single setting that you saw me using in the studio here is available right now on the phones. What's crazy about this is the fact that it doesn't feel like there's any delay or lag at all, because it's all happening over wireless. It's not Bluetooth, it's not going to some server somewhere, it's happening locally on your own wireless. And we do have the presets that I put in here, right? Everything is there. So it's pretty cool, if you ask me, that we can do all this from the webcam controller app. There's so many times I've been live streaming on Twitch, and then I like minimize something and go to the webcam and make adjustments, and I could have been doing it this way all along. So I'm glad I'm showing you this now, because it's definitely going to be a part of my live stream like setup, where I have my phone on my stand and the web app is just always up so I can control my camera. The other thing we need to talk about too is just desk view. We've seen this before. We showed it with the original Insta360 link camera. It's a little odd on the laptop because it's really close, but if you're on a monitor or something and you were streaming, like when I actually did a Lego stream, which was different, but it was fun. People enjoyed it. So I needed a camera that was showing my desk. So the fact that I didn't have to take a webcam arm or try and finagle it or zip tie it or something to point down, I could literally just click desk view. It points the camera down. It's a little weird because the laptop, you know, it's not as far away from the desk as it would be on, say, a monitor, but it actually does anti-distortion. So you can see it doesn't look all skewed weird because of the fact that it's actually doing anti-distortion, which is kind of nice. And you can adjust that. We can even zoom out some if we need to. So as you can see, or we can zoom in. All the same functions that we had are there. So that's pretty awesome. So we don't have to worry about having a separate camera arm or something crazy to try and make it a true pointed down camera. It actually does it through software and with the skewing fix. So it's pretty awesome. Anything near the edges though might look a little bit weird or stretched out, kind of like how my fingers are. But again, it looks more natural the farther away it is from whatever it's pointing down at. This is kind of an extreme case where we're pointing down from our laptop. So the fact that it even looks normal like this at all, or normal-ish, is actually pretty impressive for it. So obviously there's way more that I could ever talk about in one video without it being an hour long. These are just some of the features I think are most relevant to my audience and the use case you might be using them, because it's the way I've been using the camera now for about 2 years. Obviously the microphone is a nice to have. There's no reason to not have it. And the one thing we haven't talked about is price. You might look at that and say, well, they added this whole new microphone thing. That obviously it's a way to keep the price up. No. In fact, this camera is significantly cheaper than the Link 1. So the Link 1, as you can see, is just the gimbal with the sensor, and it's much smaller than this one, but it doesn't have the microphone. I mean, it has a microphone, but it's really not great. It's just those 2 dots in the front, and it really was not good at all. This was a $300 webcam when it came out. The Link 2, the gimbal one that we have here, is $199. It is 33% cheaper, and it has all the same features, the same sensor, and all the extra stuff we've talked about with the voice suppression and the upgraded software to control it with giving you more scenes and stuff. It is hard to believe that they made it better and have more for less. Now the Link 2C that we've been shooting the main roll on right now in this video, which doesn't have a gimbal, is $149. So it now puts the Insta360 webcams in reach of a lot more people in terms of price, and it definitely makes it price competitive with a lot of the other brands that are out there charging just as much, if not more, than these cameras now, giving you, in my opinion, which is significantly less quality. So that's why when Insta360 reached out and said, hey, do you want to check out our latest version of the Link webcam? I was like, yes, because I was curious as to what could possibly be better about it. So when it comes to privacy mode and stuff, which is one thing I haven't talked about yet, just like the Link 1, when the Link 2 is not being used, it points the camera down because it's on a gimbal, so it can just hide the sensor and point it straight down. The Link 2C, by the way, because it has no gimbal, does have a switch on the side which closes a physical iris in front of the lens, completely blocking it out. And it's orange, so it's easy to see from a distance if your webcam is available to software or not. So if you close the iris, doesn't matter if a piece of software tries to access it, it can't be used or can't be seen. Bravo, in my opinion, to Insta360 for improving a product and having it be cheaper. It is easy to justify the cost of improvements and bake that into the cost of your product, or even leave it the same. I think for most people, seeing something improve and be the same price is already a win. But to have it improve and then become 33% cheaper or half the price if you don't need the gimbal, that's pretty insane. So anyway, huge thanks to Insta360 for sponsoring today's video and sending us the link to see and the link to take a look at. You guys can follow the link in the description below if you want to go shopping for one yourself. They have all the links down there that'll tell you way more about the camera that you can find on their website than we were able to show you in one video. But this isn't just one of those sponsored videos where I'm like, yeah, it's cool, let's talk about it. I've been using this exact camera. It's not in here because it is the one I had been using in my live streams for the last 2 years. And I've never had a newcomer come to my live stream and not ask me what webcam I'm using, because they think I have some sort of a small DSLR hooked up to a HDMI capture device, because it's always way better than they expect it to be. They think there's no way it's a webcam, and I have to show them every single time, yes, it is a webcam. So anyway, thanks for watching. Sound off down below how you feel about this. If you're looking for a small, agile camera like this, I love the gimbal aspect of it. You can't go wrong with what Insta360 is offering. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.